everyone, welcome back to Deeper Roots. The famous pacifist and lawyer Mahatma Gandhi once said, "If it weren't for Christians, I'd be a Christian." And that statement rings true for so many Americans. Across this nation, we've been plagued with headlines caused by identified Christians and evangelicals, which makes us question, what is pushing people away from God? Today, we're talking about Christian, quote, pride, and we hope that you'll listen along as we discuss. Do you have a question or a topic? We'd love to talk about it. Submit it to www.ibbvn.org/deeperroots so you can be a part of the next episode. Also, you can catch the rest of our episodes and the other platforms that we're streaming on. Thank you for joining us here on Deeper Roots. Let's get to the conversation. Hey everyone, welcome back to Deeper Roots. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Today, here recording, we have myself, we have Pastor Luis, and we also have Esther here. We are going to be talking about a topic. We don't have a question from anyone in the audience or in who's listening, but we would love to hear your questions or your topics. If you want to submit any kind of question or a topic, we would love to hear it. You can submit it at www.ibbvn.org/deeperroots. There, you'll find the form to submit your question, but you'll also be able to see the other episodes that we have, and you'll also be able to see the other places that we're streaming. All great stuff there on the website. So go check it out, and we hope that you submit your own question or topic. But today, we're going to be talking about this topic on air quotes Christian, remove air quotes, pride, Christian pride, and there's a whole bunch of different ways that we can go about this question of Christian pride. But we're going to start with something that I feel like is more damaging and more, in the long run, is more damaging, but also more urgent and more relevant to most Christians nowadays, which is this holier than thou syndrome. Pastor, do you want to get us started, or
Sure.
Want to move us forward?
Sure. So holier than thou syndrome. I like that. And we'll have to coin that phrase. The Pharisaical spirit, we could call it as well. And there's so many ways that you could really talk about pride. I think we're going to dedive into that pretty soon, but just want to start out with a question. Pride, we all know, is a sin, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We all agree that pride is a sin before the eyes of God. But yet it's, I think, and that's why I want to start with this question and sort of go around the table and think what you think. I think there's things about the sin of pride that are very unique, make it stand out in a certain way. And I want to see if you guys also agree with that. I have a couple thoughts, but let's see, Esther, is the sin of pride a very unique one in a sense of what it is and how it operates, etc.?
Well, my brain started jumping on examples of those that fell because of pride, and the devil was it. And do I think it's something special? I think so. I mean, if the devil fell on that one, and boy, did it change our lives as a result. I do think there's something about it. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud right now as I contemplate and think about that. You know, it's a feeling, but it also drives you. It's such a strong drive, that pridefulness, that it makes you do things you would have never thought of doing. It takes you to saying things, actions. I don't know. I'm just, again, thinking out loud of the deep-rooted, not evil, but just bad stuff that come out of it. Yeah. Is what I'm thinking in my head as I just contemplate on that.
Well, I think it's interesting you use the word "come out of it" because it's really is the original sin. Mm-hmm. You know, in Catholicism they use that to refer to the sin we're born with and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then they baptize a child to get rid of the original sin, but there's no such thing in the Bible. But there is an original sin in the Bible, which was the first sin to actually exist, which was pride. The devil, right? The devil is the originator of sin, and he said, I will ascend up to heaven. I will be like the most holy one. I will sit upon the throne. And definitely, yeah, I think it's a good picture. Like you said, what comes out of it, it's like a seed, right? That's where it all started, and all the sin that can come out of it. So, yeah, I think in that way, sin is a very unique sin because it is the original sin, right? The one from which many other things flow. Brother Derek, any other way you think sin is very unique?
Pride.
I mean, sorry, sin. Yeah, pride is a very unique sin in its way, how it is, or how it exists, or how it operates.
I think that pride on its own is, like you said, it's the original sin, but it is one of those sins that comes up so quietly. It comes up so it just comes up so slowly that most people, Christians, non-Christians, most people aren't going to recognize it, especially in its smaller forms. Like we last episode we briefly mentioned on like this entitlement that it seems that is infecting a lot of today's culture. And because like younger generation is more engulfed in today's culture because they're literally growing up in it, but not just exclusive to them, but this entitlement is slowly creeping its way into especially American culture, and people are expecting, like, why isn't my package going to be here in 2 days, when in reality, like, who's the one who's like working extremely hard to get your package before the 2-day mark, right? And we feel like we're entitled because I pay for this service, so why don't I get the things that I want? And like, yeah, okay, well, you will get them, but at someone else's expense. And that's just the whole pride issue. It's like, I want mine, and I want what I want, and I'm gonna get what I want, and I don't care if anyone else has to get in, what else everyone else has to do. It's so ingrained in our culture that it's actually just turned into a different word. It's like the hustle.
The hustle. That's a new one to me.
Like at least especially when it comes to like this is what I see in my side of like my little subsection of the culture, which is just like everyone wants to be able to, like, we want to make more money, we want to make we want to like make it big, or not. I don't want to make it big, but I do want to be able to like afford a house, right? And the way that people do that tends to be like, oh, you want to make more money? Well, then just go buy a house and rent it out. But whose expense is it at? It's at the expense of the people you're renting to, right? Yeah. They're going to be paying more money than you were going to pay, and they're not. And even when you're done paying off the house, and like they're still paying the house, all of people's expenses, and that's just a pride there. It is, and the society doesn't see it that way. Because like, oh no, but they're just hustling. They're making their name known, or and there we go. There's another problem. Like they want to make it big. They want to be remembered. And I know that like in Christian media, or like Christian and in church, we're always saying like we have to let go of our pride. And there's this song that I love. It's from Casting Crowns. It's called Nobody. It's I'm just a nobody who's trying to tell everybody about somebody who saved my soul, and just like talks about like all like not all, but like a lot of different ways that pride affects us, and how we need to turn ourselves back to calling ourselves, so like to humbling ourselves and realizing that we're not anybody special, but God made us special regardless. It's weird. It feels weird. It feels kind of like a paradox. Yeah. But that's where I feel like pride is different. Pride just it sneaks up on you.
Yeah, I like that, because it's like it's very pernicious, right? And that's where we're going with this question, because where it shouldn't be something that's really not only existing but also defended and stuff should be in church. It shouldn't be like that, and yet it is, so pride sometimes finds its way into the circles where it shouldn't even be. And I'm going to speak as a pastor. I mean, even within pastors, there's a lot of pride today, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But I wanted to ask also, in your mind, what definition would you give pride? Because I think we sort of all get pride as a concept, but how would you define it in words? Esther, or should I come back to you? She's looking out the window in thought. Do you have an idea, Brother Derek?
I think I touched on it a little bit when I was just rambling just now. But I think that a good definition of pride is believing that your wants, desires, maybe even your needs are more important than those of the people around you.
Okay, very good. Esther?
Yeah, I think I would go the same venue of thinking that you put yourself first. Not only put yourself first, but you think of yourself so much better than others. Because I think it's a little bit more than that. It's putting others down and putting yourself on top. So, yes, putting yourself first, and thinking, taking it that further step of others are not as great as I am. So that extra step of thinking you're better than others.
Okay. Why does God hate pride, though? Besides just being a sin, obviously it's a sin, anything offensive, but what's the whole logic behind it? I think that sort of goes into the whole definition, right? Because both of you touched on the idea of how attitudes we take towards others, right? But before that, we have to talk about the vertical, right? There's the vertical, the horizontal, our relationship to God. And pride in itself is giving, I'm reading here a definition, it says giving ourselves the credit for something that God has accomplished, and giving ourselves a place that doesn't correspond to us, but only God. And in the end, it comes to that same exact nature that filled Satan, right? Of wanting to take a place and credit of something that didn't respond to him or didn't correspond to him. You know, I want to read this verse right here in Psalm 10:4. It says, "In his pride, the wicked does not seek him. In all his thoughts, there is no room for God." You know, it's about, okay, I am the author of what I have and my accomplishments and everything, and it's so important to understand that definition, because of that we feel like we are better than others, right? Because I have this job because I'm so smart, or I have this family because I built it, or I did this, and and it's a whole bunch of I's that fills us with pride. And in the end, right, and what does the Bible teach us? It teaches us that none of us are really authors of anything except for our own sin, right? Everything good in life, every accomplishment, everything that we do is because of God. And in Galatians, let me read this here in 2 Corinthians 7:4, it says, "I am acting with great boldness towards you. I have great pride in you. I am filled with comfort. In all affliction, I am overflowing with joy." Because then, now we talk about, what about being proud about accomplishments of others, right? And that's sort of where we're going to go with the second topic about where does pride fit into as far as being proud of something, right? As in the sense of being pleased or being content with something, right? So we'll talk about that. So the first angle you wanted to give it was, why is it there's so much pride in Christian circles, right?
Yeah, but I still want to stick to the holier than thou, so just for like a tad longer, like that. But I do remember. So I remember that we were having this conversation. Well, like you were having this lesson with our youth group during our question and answer time that we had with our youth group, and during that talk you were talking about the Pharisees, and you just mentioned like Pharisaical. What was the word that you used? Pharisaical spirit. And we look back at the Pharisees, and we see that they are I know the law better than the average person, therefore, and like I'm the one who's going to be wearing the gold and the jewels. I'm the one who's going to be with the white garments and everything, and the people around me aren't. it's a pride there, and then the thing is that I don't see that talked often, especially like in some more larger, more traditional megachurch situations, because turns out that I'm not saying that this is what everyone in like a larger megachurch is listening to or like feeling about, but like because that is kind of what makes us uncomfortable, because we want to live with jewels and gold in our clothing. We want to live with white robes and feel better and essentially feel better than other people. So why are we going to accuse them of being proud? But that's exactly what Jesus did. You called you said in there, like one of the quotes that Jesus had was that he called them like a brood of vipers. You're a brood of vipers. They aren't following God's law because they are being more proud, but they are following God's law. But ultimately, that isn't the fact that they have. They lost the spirit of the law.
Exactly.
But even though they're they're still following the actual words.
They're following the words, but the letter of the law, but not the heart of the law. Two things come to mind. Of course, the horse we always mention. I have a little thing here with a horse always in my office, and when you mentioned the word mega church, right? You think about the churches that really thrive today are those that stroke people's pride. And it can be on either side of the horse. You have the mega church like Joel Osteen's, where you go there and get a pep talk and everything's about you. You are the greatest. You deserve God's best. You deserve everything. And it's all about you, and you come out with just a pep talk, but not really a humility before God, and sort of get to that idea that I deserve everything, right? So that's one kind of church, and those churches fill up quick. Or the churches that preach prosperity gospel about getting more money, and you're going to be rich, and give your seed of faith, and then God's going to give you more. It's all about me. And those are one type of churches. And then you go to the other side of the horse, where you have the legalistic churches. I sometimes struggle with that, because sometimes you see some legalistic churches that have all these rules and standards and everything, and man, they do well. They have a lot of attendance, and people like very devout to the church. But with a very pharisaical attitudes, where they also feel like they're better than others because I follow more this and I do this more, and I wear better clothes, or I dress more with a tie. This heathen comes into church without a tie, and all these things, and just this nature that is stroked by churches today, which is our pride, which wants to make us feel better than others, wants to help us think that we are better, and when it comes to salvation, when it comes to Jesus's message and the focus and the crux of his gospel, it's all about not deserving anything, and that everything we have is by grace. And I think that's where people forget, and that's where the imbalance is many times in today's churches today, because they forget, on one side they forget that we're sinners and that we need to want to please God, and that it's all about him. But understand that if anything we are and anything we do, it's all by grace. Like Paul said, por la gracia de Dios soy lo que soy. By grace of God, I am what I am, right? And he had his focus on the Lord. With regard to the youth group, when I spoke about that, it was in response to salvation, and they were talking about losing salvation, and can you lose salvation, and are people in church, sometimes all people in church really saved? I'm like, no, no, there's a lot of people in church that are not saved. And that's where I said, Jesus spoke the harshest words to the religious people, because religion provides an ambiance for pride, where you can feel better about your accomplishments. And see, that's why salvation can't be by works, and it can't be maintained by works, because you can't lose it to begin with. Because if in any way works played into it, then that part of Ephesians 2:8-9 would also fit in. It says, so that no one should boast, because the Bible knows that we will boast on anything that we do. So then it sort of makes that emphasis. It's not about you. It's not about you in any way or form. And anything you do, it's all because of Christ. Yesterday we had a birthday party we were invited to. And Hermana, she's such a blessing. And she, like I told her, my words to her was, you are this earthen vessel with so much treasure within her. She uses it for the Lord so beautifully in her singing and her art and all that stuff. But the best part about it is that she actually lives that verse, so that the glory may be of God and not of us. So we have this treasure in earthen vessels, so that the excellency of the power may be of God and not of us. And that's 2 Corinthians 4:7, because that's what the gospel is really about: understanding that we are nothing but earthen vessels. We don't deserve anything. And anything we do, anything we are, anything we accomplish, it's all because of the glory of God. For the power may be of Him and not of us. And then a lot of churches miss that. And there's a lot of churches very filled with pride. And I'm not saying our church isn't in there too. But we have to fight against that attitude of feeling better than others. Thinking that we deserve more than others, and that somehow, some way, that I deserve more grace than the other sinner deserves. And especially when it comes to things like today, we're talking about homosexuality, all that stuff. There's some people that really, their attitude towards people who struggle with same-sex attraction is just very sad. Mm-hmm. It's just very sad because you see the Pharisaical attitude within them, as if their sins weren't as bad as what anybody else struggles with. And it's something we really need to understand, that Jesus did not teach that. He taught that we are all sinners and all the sins are the same, and we all need God's grace, and we have no room for pride.
And I think that's a good segue into the other section of what today was supposed to be about pride, about Christian pride. I think that more often than not, this sin of pride, especially within Christians, especially within like our communities, it is one of the biggest avenues toward hatred, toward allowing hatred. And I've seen that in my own life. I've seen that in the lives of the people around me. And I wanted to talk about that, like, it's in respect to like Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism on its own is sort of pride, and I think most people can recognize that. They're maybe not proud, not necessarily proud of like being Christian, but they are, right? They say like, oh, I'm a God-fearing American or something like that, right? But at the same time, they are saying that they're proud of their country, and more often than not, it just turns into this avenue to hate other people. At least that's what I've seen a lot, and that's what I've seen in terms of like what I've seen getting vote for in like in other smaller in a state by state basis, and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to, maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Okay, very good. Like I said, we did mention a little bit about, even in 2 Corinthians 7:4, where even Paul is saying, hey, I am have pride in you, right? And sometimes there is a type of pride that we use the word pride, but maybe it's not the best word to be used in our English language. If we had to use a better word, is the word that we have in the Bible, which is to be content, right? Or well pleased. We see that when Jesus was baptized, right? Remember, the dove comes down, the heavens open up, and there's a voice heard from heaven that said, this is my son in which I am well pleased, right? In Español, estoy bien, what's the word? I forget. Complacido. And yeah, there is a place for feeling, I hate to use the word pride, but feeling pleased about accomplishments of others, right? It's usually not within yourself, it's with others. You see your kids get an A on a test, or you see your kid win their soccer game, whatever, and you feel this pleasure, and you're pleased in seeing them do good. That in itself is not bad. But like you said, you're talking about pride when it actually comes into where now it's not just about being pleased that my country is a good country, or that we do live in a better country than a lot of other countries struggle today, and whatever, economically or whatever. And then we allow an area for it to become pride, where now we feel better than others, right? Instead of just humbly saying, thank you, Lord, because I live in a country where there's still liberty, where there's still economic well-being. We let it go to our heads. Oh, I am an American and I am this. And like you said, and then sometimes we mix it with religion. We mix it with the gospel. We mix it with churches. And sometimes we put our nationalism over Jesus himself. And that's where, when it comes politics and stuff, and election cycles, you see that stoke its ugly head, with sometimes people have more loyalty towards a party, a Republican or Democrat or otherwise, and then what God has to say. And your loyalties are shown that you are more patriot than you are God aligned. And that's where it does become pride. It becomes pride because you're feeling better, and everyone else is damned, but I'm in the right party, or I'm in the right place, or I'm in the right country. And like you said, that, and unfortunately, you're right, a lot of churches do fly the American flag before the Christian flag. And there's nothing wrong with being pleased, to being content to be in a good country, or like your country and support your country, or defend its freedom or whatever. That's great. I'm glad, and I support and thankful for all those who serve our country in the armed forces and everything. And but there's two ways to go around it. Either feeling prideful about it, I'm the best, and we're going to go kill everybody else's nation because every other nation be damned. No. But instead be humble and saying, thankfully, I live in this country. I love this country. I am thankful for being in this country, and I am out here to help other countries. I think that has been lost in America, in a big deal, and also in churches.
Mm-hmm. Esther, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think I've just been listening and just contemplating the importance of our responsibility of examining ourselves daily. We can all fall into pridefulness in many ways, and the importance as individual, and importance as leaders of the church, importance as the church, because as we were talking about, it'll find a way. Human sinful nature will find a way. And I was just thinking in the future while you guys were talking about how in the millennium, it'll just be believers, but guess what? It'll always find a way, right? Because supposedly only believers will be on earth. Mm-hmm. And guess what happens? Sin finds a way. And it's just a reminder of our sinful nature that we have to reflect daily, and really our need for God daily it's so true.
Amen. You just made me think of Jurassic Park. Nature always finds a way. But so does sin. That's in our nature.
Sinful nature finds a way.
To end our session, I want to read Proverbs 16, 18 through 19. Did you have some follow-ups before that?
I think that the follow-ups that I do have just deserve their own episode.
Okay.
So,
sounds good. So that means more episodes on Pride coming.
Yeah.
We'll be proud of those. I'm just kidding.
No,
Proverbs 16, 18 through 19, it says, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. It is better to be of a lowly spirit with the poor than to divide the spoil with the proud. And I just want to make a call to all Christians listening to us today. If you're a Christian, if you've been saved by the grace of God, don't ever forget that. It's all by grace. You don't deserve anything. I don't deserve anything. It's all because of what he did. The only work that deserves praise and honor and everything is the work of Christ Jesus on the cross, and everything else that comes with it, and everything he does for us every day. And we cannot take pride in that. And remember also that as Christians, we're meant here to be light. We're meant here to be salt. And Jesus said clearly that when the salt loses its flavor, it is only left to be trampled down upon men. And that goes in line with this verse where it says pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before the fall. So let me just speak to you if you are a very nationalist Christian. If you really love America, if you really care for this country and you wish for this country to still see some good days ahead, the best thing you could do is to not be prideful and to really be humble before the Lord and to truly be the salt that we're supposed to be and the light that we're supposed to be, because if not, we're going to be the very reason this country sees its own destruction. Because pride comes before destruction and the haughty spirit before the fall. And unfortunately, I think we're seeing that. We're seeing America fall amongst the nations. We're seeing America's height come to an end because of the pride that we allow to have in our culture, in society in general, but let's just be honest, in our churches. And that's why I speak to you, Christian, because we can't do anything about the prideful unbeliever except go and share the gospel. We're not going to do that unless you first deal with the pride within ourselves, within our churches, within our pulpits, within pastors. Sometimes we are very prideful and judge ourselves by how many people we have in our churches, whether we have ministries, whether we have radio ministries, or I'm better because look at all this I've built. You understand that if we went to the Old Testament and we judged by the standards we judge today, we would look at Jonah and say, wow, what a great preacher. He must have been a man of God. If that's all we knew, the results. A whole city gets saved in one day. And then we would look at Isaiah and say, man, what a poor guy. Or Jeremiah, the crying prophet, look, no one followed him. He ends up in a pit and everything. And we would say, what a horrible servant of God. And that's not how God judges. Out of those two, Jeremiah was the humble one, while Jonah was the prideful.
Jesus talks about how as Christians we need to be the salt of the earth, right? And when you add salt to some food, it tastes amazing, right? It tastes great. But then he goes on to say that if salt were to lose its flavor, would that food still be good? And no, typically, like if you have like not so good tasting food or bland tasting food, then if you add salt, it feels better. It's the same way for us Christians. That's literally what Jesus is trying to say. If we are to be just like the rest of the world, we're not the salt of the earth, then the rest of the world is going to basically be that bland food. And in this case, it would be our nation or our country, right? We want to be proud of our country, but then we end up sinning and we end up not doing what Jesus would have done. And then as a result, we are the ones who end up making this country not taste great.
Exactly.
Right? It would be like if we are going to be just like the rest of this world, just like the rest of this country, just like the rest of our neighbors around us, we are the reasons why this country won't be good. We are going to be, and if this country is going to fall, it will be our fault. And that we can't blame anyone but ourselves because it was our pride that did us in.
Amen.
So just if someone out there is listening and is thinking about like how is my feeling about my country in relation to my Christian faith, to my belief in Jesus, it's exactly that. It's much harder, much more easily said than done, but you need to find and recognize that there is pride in that in your life. I need to recognize that there's more pride in my life. I need to just continue snooping around. I still even in places where I recognize that I was prideful, I still have that pride. It is so much more difficult than how it's said. It's a very difficult process, and it isn't going to be done overnight, right? But recognizing that sin is, what they say, it's a first step.
It's the first step.
So we pray that those of you who either struggle with pride, or those of you who are noticing those around you, maybe they're struggling with pride, but you recognize that you also might have some pride in you as well. I would just pray that you will be able to not only overcome, but also be the better change in your own life. Find God and find how He is the one who's going to be able to take away that pride away from you. Any other notes that we want to add?
That's it. We thank you for your listening today.
Thank you for listening today. If you want to send us a topic that you want to listen to, or a question that you might have, please, we would love to hear it. We mentioned at the beginning of the episode, but you can go to www.ibbvn.org/deeperroots. It's going to be there in the description, but there you'll be able to find the episodes that we have. You'll also be able to find the other streaming platforms that we're on, and of course that forum that you can submit your own topic or question to. Again, thank you again for listening to this episode, and we hope that you will come back in the next one. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Deeper Roots. If you want to submit a question, follow up on something we talked about on the podcast, or you want to find us online, you can go to our webpage, which is ibbvn.org/deeperroots. Deeper Roots is a ministry of Iglesia Bíblica Baptista Vida Nueva, which is a local church in Castro Valley, California. And you can learn more about us and our church by going to our website, ibbvn.org.